Welcome to MRII's Insights and Innovators podcast, where we talk to top market research professionals to get their inside stories about innovative and enduring best practices. Today's episode is sponsored by Sawtooth Software. Sawtooth Software is a leading provider of advanced tools for computer and internet interviewing, conjoint analysis, max diff scaling, perceptual mapping, and more, all backed by our unparalleled support team. Now here's your host for today's episode.
Thanks for joining today's episode of Insights and Innovators. I'm your host for today, Stan Thanunathan. Today's topic is energizing the insights function. In other words, making sure that insights function finds its mojo and is seen as critical for business decisions that C-suite level people grapple with. Today, we have lined up a perfect guest for this topic, Colleen Fahy, Executive Vice President and Chief Research Officer of Paramount. Colleen has spent a long time in the world of insights and media research, where she has earned a stellar reputation, and I've had the pleasure of serving on the board of ARF alongside her. In this episode, Colleen would share her perspective on the exciting world of media insights. Whether you're on the client side or on the agency side, you will find her insights very valuable in shaping your career, as well as shaping the role of your agency or the function within whatever operating unit you are in. Welcome, Colleen.
Thank you so much, Stan. It's great to be with you. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. I would like to kick off this whole conversation by asking you a few questions about you and your illustrious career. Before then, I would like to know your thoughts on the state of our industry. But first, I would love to get your perspective on a topic that is pervasive for many in our industry, and perhaps more so for the media industry than any other. And that is the question of how insights function can help lead a business to success during times of massive transformation. There is no business that is going through transformation as much as, let's say, the media businesses. And you run research at Paramount, which is, right at the pinnacle of, the whole world of media. Can you give me an example of a change initiative that you helped lead or at least contributed to that had a very strong impact on the company?
Wow, that's a great question. I think that I don't know that it would be a single study. I would say that it's a body of work that we've been sort of shepherding and nurturing around how people think about and access television, right? For young people, children and teenagers and people in their young 20s. Television isn't linear TV the way that a whole generation or two ahead of them thinks of it as. It's much more of an on-demand experience. It's oftentimes commercial free. A lot of the time it's things like YouTube and TikTok. The very definition of what entertainment is and what you can watch on TV is so different for the younger end of our population. And yet we are a broadcast network with CBS. We're a portfolio of cable networks, which are also meant to command large audiences, not super niche, even though that's how cable was thought of in the first place. And we have a premium streaming service in Paramount Plus. And so each of these things has to somehow attract all populations, whether they are old or young. So it's a matter of programming to people no matter where they are. And I think that that's sort of the core of our body of work, is that you've got to try to attract each demo at each endpoint as opposed to any one endpoint. Because people do spend time in a variety of different places. They have different need states. They might go to a streaming service or YouTube or a broadcast network in different need states. And your content has to be in each of those endpoints if you're going to win. It's kind of like shelf space in the consumer packaged goods arena.
I love the analogy that you drew toward the end, comparing it to shelf space. But boy, this is way more complicated than shelf space, I would say, because this is uh, it's such a dynamic industry. So it must be exciting, but at the same time, it might be intimidating too. So it's fascinating. It's fascinating to hear you talk about how the media landscape has changed and therefore what we need to do. And along the same lines, is there an example that you can give where an insight that was brought to the senior leadership of the company, and with the benefit of hindsight, you can now turn on and say, "I wish they had acted on it, and things would have been different."
Mm.
Is there something that comes to your mind in your long career?
Yeah, I think, one thing that comes to mind, it was it was more about how I handled what I wish that I had handled it differently. It was basically a big deep dive brand study,
Mm,
and it was not a positive report.
mm,
It was not a positive presentation. There was a lot of trouble brewing. And what I should have done was preview it for the president, as opposed to him, as opposed to her actually being with this large group of executives, hearing the news for the first time alongside them. It sort of took away their opportunity to lead in that moment. And if I had previewed it for them, I think they might have been able to sit with it and think about it, and we could have strategized together
mm,
how to how to frame the findings and frame it as a rally cry.
mm.
And because I didn't handle it that way, I think I took away that opportunity for them. And so had a lot of cleanup to do after the fact. And so sometimes it isn't the findings, but how you communicate the findings
Yeah.
that can really alter the trajectory of something.
Now, that is indeed very profound, Colleen. What you touched upon was the what of insights is important, but the how is probably more important in certain situations. And that's how you have to. And I think as professionals, we sometimes don't give the how as much importance as it deserves. And then we complain, saying that, oh, I had a great finding, nobody ever listened to me. No, that's not, having great findings is part of the story, but how you actually do. And that's a great example of how you brought to life the importance of it. Thank you so much for doing that. Um, Again, the backdrop, I would like to now talk to you about, what got you to where you are today. You had a phenomenal career, and you have a role which is probably one of the most preeminent roles in the world of media insights. So tell us a little bit about your journey, where you started, how did you get to where you got to today?
Oh, wow, sure. Well, I went to Cornell University, and after I graduated, I got a job at CBS in the research department.
Hmm.
And I moved around a couple of different departments there in the 7 or so years that I was at the company. I also got my MBA at night at NYU because they had a tuition assistance program,
Hmm.
which was a great opportunity because I didn't feel like I could step off to further my education. So I kind of had to do both at the same time.
Hmm.
Um, in any case, I learned a lot during that time. My job was obviously super narrow. When you're a junior analyst or an analyst, you're working on something very specific.
Hmm.
You just have to work very hard at whatever that small thing is that you're focused on,
Hmm.
and learn as much as you can. Then I went to Telemundo, which was Spanish language broadcast television, where I learned an awful lot about that part of the population and how important they are to marketers. Um, and that was also when I got a lot more into consumer insights, not just media, like Nielsen ratings type of part of the media research world.
Hmm.
Then I went to J. Walter Thompson, which is an ad agency, because I felt I really wanted to become a more well-rounded media research executive, and being on the agency side is a very different point of view than
Hmm.
being on the publisher side. And then I went to Viacom, and Viacom merged with CBS and became Paramount. And I've been here for over 20 years. So I've really been on the media side, um, as opposed to the agency or marketer side of the ecosystem for a very long time. I love having a home team to root for.
Mm.
Um, and I think that what worked out really well for me is that when I was at Viacom, the company was growing and the industry was growing, right? It
Mm.
was building, it was growing, it was expanding. And because of that, opportunities and more responsibilities um, happened for me. And
Mm.
that is really, I think, how I worked hard. I tried to be smart. I tried to be excellent in my job. But really, I think the trick is the magic is that I worked at a company that was growing in an industry that was growing. And I think about this a lot because I have kids who are in their 20s who are trying to make their way in their careers. And to me, it's all about the company that you're working for and the industry that you're working in if you want to have a career that's going to flourish.
Mm.
And I think that that's half the battle.
Again, another real pearl of wisdom and something that is very practical that people can take away. I mean, of course, you have to be smart, you have to work hard, all that is great, but, also being in the right industry is also equally important, and let's not ignore that. And that's a great advice for, people who are starting, and especially when you personalize it in terms of your own kids. Uh,
Yeah, well, it's easier said than done, right? I mean,
it
it's
is,
a
it is.
really tough job market out there.
There is nothing more real than that in terms of advice. Now, you've been an iconic person in the media insights ever since I've known you. I don't know how many years ago now. And while you talked about your journey, you also talked about being in media insights for a long time, but you're also in the consumer insights side of the business for some time. Tell me, what are the two or three fundamentally different things that differentiate media insights from, let's say, consumer insights? Because the world of media insights is not something that most people are as intimately familiar as, let's say, the world of consumer insights. And you're the
Right.
best person to
Well,
talk about it. Yeah.
I think of the media insights part of my job
Mm.
as where we're really analyzing for a long, long time, we were analyzing Nielsen ratings, right? Like the consumption data,
Mm.
which for consumer packaged goods would be, any of the purchase data, right?
Mm.
So viewing data and purchase data are really the same sort of thing. You're just
Mm.
analyzing how much is being bought, where is it being bought, what is being watched, who's watching it, what
Mm.
else do they watch, when are they watching it?
Mm.
And then, of course, that's moved from being just Nielsen ratings to other measurement companies like ComScore and VideoAmp, but also streaming data, right?
Mm.
So we don't we don't have to buy that data from somebody else. We engineer the data ourselves, and so we have a lot of our own first party consumption data around things like Yellowstone and 1923 and Landman and all of the stuff that's on Paramount Plus. And so the media metrics aspect of media research is what I think makes it a little bit different from
Mm.
other consumer insights roles. The consumer insights part of being in media research is where you are doing content testing and you're asking people
Mm.
about individual shows or episodes or commercials for shows, ad campaigns. And also, we do a lot of brand studies to understand how kids or teens or adults, or in the case of BET, African Americans, think about our brands and our competitors' brands and how they're watching TV so that we can
Mm.
know everything there is to know, soup to nuts,
Mm.
about the consumer and how they think about the media space, and not just
Mm.
linear TV, but also streaming as well, right?
Mhm.
Netflix and Paramount Plus and Amazon Prime Video.
Mm.
It's a very crowded media marketplace
But it
nowadays.
is. It is incredibly crowded. I don't know. I mean, my mind would have exploded given the kind of complexity of. I mean, I don't. I struggle personally as a consumer to figure out what show is in which platform. Even
You're
just
not
that.
the only one.
Yeah, and just maybe there's an opportunity of somebody who can actually make that easy for people. Because so much of content, one life isn't enough to watch all the content.
It's so
Anyway,
true.
yeah. Uh, you know, obviously, the world of AI and machine learning is all over the waves. Now, tell me, how is that impacting the world of insights in general and also media insights in particular, as you see?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think um, that we need to be doing more to harness AI for personal productivity, for analyzing the quantitative results of surveys. I think there's chatter now about, synthetic respondents and things like that. Um, I think that there's a lot of experimentation right now, and we're not completely trusting everything because
Hmm.
I think you have to sort of test and learn to really feel confident that some of these other quicker, faster, um, artificial respondents and things like that are actually giving you what
Meaning.
you need
Hmm.
and not false signs.
Hmm.
And another thing um, that is creeping into more and more survey research is fraudulent respondents. And rooting that out is, I think, a place where AI is actually coming in really handy for us,
Hmm. Hmm.
where when we go through the results by hand, like we need to automate that so that AI can do that for us and root out the fraudulent respondents.
Hmm.
We see that the biggest cues come from open-ended responses.
Hmm.
And that's where we've been pointing some attention to in the past 6 months.
Okay. Now, we talked a lot about the what, and we'll just pivot toward the how, because you did talk about how being very important. What advice would you have for people who are entering the world of media insights? Some do's and don'ts based on your own personal experience.
Um, so I work with my team a lot around um, activating insights, right? And if you say, there's just a simple some data, right? And they analyze it, and I'm like, okay, so that's the what. What's the so what? What's the so like? Don't just tell me we were up or we were down, or this show did well or this show did badly. Like what is it like? Tell us what to think about it. Somebody's oftentimes a senior executive is reading something on a phone, right? So it has to be a very executive length summary that tells them not just the results, but what to think about the results.
Mm,
Interpret it for them. That's when you're really driving value, right?
mm,
The what becomes the so what and the what next. What can
mm,
you anticipate? What should we thinking
mm,
going forward, knowing what we just learned from whatever this report was or whatever these findings were?
mm,
To me, that is where a research person and the research function can actually be much more valuable to a stakeholder than if you act like a backroom operation and
mm.
you're just an order taker, like a drive up window at Burger King where you're like, would you like fries with that, sir? Like, you will never have a seat at the table if you comport yourself that way
Mm.
within a department. You will make an impression on senior people in the research function if if you do the so what and the what next as opposed to just the what. And as
Beautiful.
a function, you will be much more valuable to stakeholders in doing the same thing, the so what and the what next. You'll get a seat at the table, and that's what matters the most.
Beautiful. Beautiful. If you have to start your career all over again today, would you do exactly what you've done, or what would you give as an advice to yourself, let's say 30 years ago, based on all that you
That's
have
a good
today?
question. I feel like the world is moving so much more quickly than it was when I first started.
Mm,
And I think that I would tell anybody starting out now that you have to commit yourself to spending time outside of work hours, upskilling yourself, learning more about how large language models can help you in your job and in your personal productivity. Reading, becoming a student of the industry that you are within, and shoulder industries as well. Even if you don't work in ad sales, you need to understand what the ad agency's pain points are and what the marketers, their clients of the ad agencies are, what their pain points are. You need to become a student of the whole business and not just like put yourself in a little corner of it. If you that kind of worldview, that kind of thinking and observing and critical thinking is what's going to help you come across as smarter and more valuable and help you rise through the ranks, either within the company that you're at or getting into your next job.
That's amazing. Thank you. Now, given your job title, you're obviously at the pinnacle of the function within Paramount. Any tips on leadership and influencing skills that are required to change the business trajectory?
I think that some of the things I've learned about leadership along the way are how important it is to communicate with teams a lot, frequently. In lots of different form factors. They want to hear from you about what's happening at the company, what's happening in the department, what's on your mind, and what you think about what's happening in the company and in the industry. People want clarity. They want and also everybody wants to know what do I need to do to get ahead? And I think being crystal clear and honest, it's hard to have hard conversations, right? Like nobody wants to say, nobody wants to give tough criticism. And so I think that companies that have developed strong performance development coaching for managers and cadence of not just an annual review one time per year, but at least twice a year, so that there's a little bit more of a conversation going on throughout the year, because that's just what the younger workforce is really expecting and needs to keep their heads in the game. So that was a free-ranging answer.
Well, no, that's great. When I was sitting and listening to all your answers, I would sum up the whole interview by saying that I wish I had done this interview 40 years ago when I started my career. I would have learned so much, and I would have turbocharged my career even more. That the summary of the interview is what I would say, Colleen. Thank you so much for an incredibly stimulating session today. I really appreciate the time that you have spent with us, and I'm sure the people who are going to listen to this podcast will derive some tremendous value based on your many years of experience in the industry. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Stan, so much. It was really great to be with you, and I had a lot of fun, too.
Thanks for joining the Insights and Innovators podcast from Market Research Institute International. Click subscribe to never miss an episode and visit us at mrii.org for more market research insights.